this. So now we're live. So, all right. So um, got a few social media mediums going here. So we'll apologize if it gets a little messy, but hopefully it won't. I want to welcome Jeremy Butler. I've known Jeremy for I don't even know how long now, but it's a number of years. I've been a big Fujikura fan for as long as I can remember. I think my first Fuji shaft was the Speeder 757 back a long time ago, and I don't remember not having a Fujikura shaft in my driver. So pretty exciting. So it's nice to have you on. Thank you for taking the time, Jeremy.
That's awesome. Thanks for the invite, Kevin. Happy to always come on and talk golf shafts. Oh, did I lose my video there?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. Always happy to talk golf shafts, and I'm fairly certain you are not alone when you say your first Fujikura golf shaft would have been a Speeder 757. There's many golfers out there who would share that same.
Yeah, was that the first shaft that Fuji came out with?
Pretty much. It was our first foray into the aftermarket world here in the U.S. So kind of adopted to tour and kind of for that custom upgrade market.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of background about yourself. I know you've been with Fuji for 16 years, and you have a mechanical engineering background. So give us a little bit of background about you for those of us who don't know you.
Correct. For those who don't know me, I grew up in Utah. I went to BYU and studied engineering. Out of college, I got a job with one of the OEM golf club companies in their research and development group. And our group at the time, we were doing shaft development. So carbon fiber, graphite was my emphasis, composites at college, and got a job working at this OEM in their shaft group. And our group morphed into full product development engineering by the time I left there in 2004. So spent just about 10 years working in that research and development group. Did shafts, grips, club heads, medallions. Those were all part of my my scope of work while I worked at that golf club company, one of the Carlsbad companies. So just down the street from Fujikura office now.
Well, you're like, well, I wonder which one it is. I'm like, well, there's about 4 right down the street from you. So
yep.
That's great. And so you started with Fuji in '96, and what was your position with them when you started?
Fujikura, I came in actually 2004. Oh, 2004 is when I came over to. Yep, 2004 is when I came over to Fujikura, and when I came over, my role was a business development manager at that time, which was basically technical OEM sales. So my job was to work with the club companies to work on projects we were doing with them, kind of stock OEM golf shafts at that point. Yeah. And so since then, I've morphed into my current role of director of sales and operations. So it's been a fun 16 years. It's awesome. Love going to work every day, and it's a lot of fun doing what we do.
Yeah. What's not fun about the golf business? Well, except for right now, but what's not fun
right now? Not so fun. Correct. As I talk to you from my house, you're in your office. We're stuck at what we're doing.
My repurposed basement has been is my new studio.
There you go.
So I have a question. So I remember back in the early 2000s with the OEMs, they used to have made for whatever company, and the shafts, and the stigmatism with those was where they were low cost, cheap versions of aftermarket shafts. Is there any truth to that?
Back in those days, I would say no. They are specific designed projects. So for me and the work we were doing at the time, The shafts that we were working on at the time would have had the moniker RCH 96, RCH 99 on them. And those were shafts that were actually designed by Callaway Golf specifically to use in their products. So
Right.
back in the day, you know, the OEM was doing the design work. They would farm it out to various shaft manufacturers. Um, ourselves, Aldla, a couple other companies that aren't around anymore, and we would make them stock for them at that time. Uh, so so we designed our own shafts in house. We developed them and went from there. Uh, so not so much aftermarket shafts watered down for low cost. We our designs back then, we were using some expensive materials for the time. I'm surprised at what we were doing.
Hmm.
Um, but there are times that nowadays, for sure, that club companies want something that appears like it is an aftermarket shaft, but
Yeah.
they do not want to pay for the aftermarket shaft. And at that point, we cost engineer product, no doubt.
Right. Yeah. It was a tough sell for me to my client saying, this shaft was made for whatever, I'm going to use Titleist because I was on Titleist back then. It was made for Titleist shaft. And like, well, that's not good because I'm pretty sure a tour guy is not using that and the quality is probably not as good. And it was a tough sell because I'm pretty sure Fujikura didn't use poor quality components to make their shafts, right?
Correct. So that's the one of the things that we always say, even now when people talk, the TaylorMade Sim driver currently, right, uses a Ventus shaft in there that we make specifically for them. It has my name on it, my brand on it, and so it has to meet my same quality criteria standards. We're not putting crap out
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think, yeah. I mean, for me, I do a lot, at Sleepy Hollow where I am, we're a regional fitting center for Titleist. And
there. Yep.
it made it a lot easier for me when Titleist took away the made for Titleist logos on their thing and the shafts had the same graphics as the ones that the PGA Tour or LPGA Tour players were using. It made it, even though it's the same shaft, it's got a little different paint and it appeared different, but it made it easier for me to sell it to my client. And we went from, we had to change what we said from stock shafts to non-upcharge shafts because stock has the stigmatism of lower quality, less expensive shaft, even though it's a high quality shaft. And Titleist for the Fujikura Atmos shaft and some of the other, Fuji shafts are non-upcharge shafts, but we changed the label from stock to non-upcharge. And it definitely, the mentality from people changed. And, it's just interesting how marketing goes. I mean, you're in sales and stuff, and that's what it's all about, right?
Correct. Yeah, one of the things that we always try to do when we talk about shafts that we make that an OEM uses as the stock offering is a lot of times we look at the stock offering as the ability to fit the widest part of that bell curve. We put out a 60-gram S-Flex, right? It's going to fit a decent amount of golfers, and it's going to work for a large majority of golfers. We also make our aftermarket product that is designed to fit the 60-gram S-Flex golfer who needs something else with a stiffer tip, a lower launch, higher spin, lower spin, things like that, where the stock shaft is designed to fit the widest part of the masses.
Yeah.
And obviously we believe in custom fitting. That's what we're all about is being custom fit and seeing somebody, a professional who can look at your swing and evaluate it. And nowadays you can test so many options and you can find something that works best for your swing. We can talk about that maybe a little bit later when we talk about what goes into fitting and testing. But you can have two guys with the same club head speed at 105 miles an hour, and they get the golf club back to impact completely different. So just because they both swing 105 miles an hour doesn't mean that the same shaft works for both of them.
Yeah, right. And you just said there's about 4 points in there that I want to pull on each point. We'll start with the last one, which is fitting, since that was your last comment. And and that's something that I love to do is fitting. So why don't you go a little bit deeper into that last work where you get two players, same speed, 105, but they might need a different shaft. Why don't you expand on that a little bit, and why would those two players need something different?
Sure. Well, partly if you look at if we jump into the fitting aspect, right? Part of being a good fitter, yourself and others that are out there that do it, is evaluating and looking at how the golfer swings the golf club, right? You look at tempo, transition, things like that, and a lot of those things add into how we then recommend what golf shaft might work best for you. In the example talking about two guys with the same club head speed is measured when they get the club back to the ball coming through impact, or even depending on what kind of launch monitor you're using, post impact, measuring the ball, going backward from there and making a calculation.
Right.
So it's that one instance where it's measuring. Whereas you can look at somebody who's got a long fluid swing, but gets that holds their angle, flips it at the end, and is able to get that club head speed as they come through impact, versus somebody who could be fast and herky jerky from the top. They pull hard from the top at transition. So somebody who's like that needs to have something that is more stable in the butt section, so it can handle that rapid transition. Whereas the guy who holds it to the end and can come through impact, he doesn't need something to stiffen the handle, because as he's coming from transition from backswing to downswing, he's able to transfer his energy immediately as he gets to the ball at impact. So two completely different golf swings,
Yeah.
but same numbers in the end, and require completely different golf shafts.
Yeah. So just to kind of simplify that just a little bit, it's for the average golfer out there, it's basically how they load the shaft, right? Your short,
That is correct.
swing, they put a little different load on the shaft versus your long, smooth swing. Even though, like you said, they both generate 105 miles an hour, it's how quickly they do it, and how much load do they put on the shaft, and the shaft, so the feel of the shaft and the way the shaft performs is going to be different for those two players, right?
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
And would you agree that weight has a lot to do with that too, of the shaft?
Weight does play a role in that. One of the things that from our side and the inside type of guys is we would recommend swinging something as light as you can control, right? So what typically happens, people think I need to go lightweight so I can swing faster, but as I go lighter weight, people tend to lose the feel of where the head might be. They tend to lose control, and at that point, then you start sacrificing center face contact. In several discussions with our vice president of engineering, Alex D, for him, a lot of times, for people who are looking to hit the center of the club face, we would actually look to go a little bit heavier in weight, because it can slow your swing. You get a little bit more control, and therefore consistency of impact coming through the center of face. Whereas people, when you get lighter weight, you get a little bit more loose with your swing. You don't hit the center of the face, you lose efficiency. So again, swing as light as you can control would be my general recommendation.
Well, you can change weight, not only the actual, the weight of the shaft, but you can change swing weight too. So you can go lighter but longer, and effectively have a little bit heavier feeling club because of the swing weight. So there's a balance. I know I did. I went up to see Liam Mucklow up in Toronto a couple of years ago, because they do a fairly in-depth driver optimization, because I just wanted to see what he was doing up there in his process. And for me, as a fitter, I was interested, and as a player, I was interested in gaining some more speed myself. I was 47 at the time. My driver speed was like 110, 112. And I went up there thinking he was going to go lighter, and I ended up in a Fuji speeder, the shaft that I like, but 78 gram, a little heavier, at 46.5 inches and an E0 swing weight.
Wow.
And that, to me, that allowed me to generate the most speed. I averaged out about 115. My dispersion went down because my centerness of contact, because of the weight of the club, went up. and or improved. And when we tried lighter, I got so wild when I got lighter. Even if I went shorter shaft, heavier shaft, I still kind of lost control and lost speed. So it was an interesting process. And I think to your point, where the fitting comes in, just because you think you're a high speed player doesn't mean you need heavy shaft or light shaft. And in some cases, you might not even need extra stiff, correct?
Uh, for sure, no doubt about it. And that's one of the joys of making shafts out of carbon fiber is, we have the ability with the way shafts are made, shafts are designed to make adjustments in little areas like you talked about. That's why when we talk about fitting the widest part of the bell curve with a stock shaft, as we get into aftermarket stuff, we're able to do things and stiffen what we'll call the tip section or the butt section, or I can move weight towards the butt, which you talked about in counterbalancing, right? So even though the shaft is lighter, we can make the swing weight lighter by putting a little more material towards the butt side rather than towards the tip side, so that you don't get your E0 swing weight, but be able to accommodate that. The joy of carbon fiber is the way shafts are made. With using pieces of carbon fiber, I can put a piece of carbon fiber material that is very lightweight yet very stiff in a section of the shaft to get the properties of the shaft I want in that area. Like a good example of that is our Ventus product that we came out with last year. It's got some very stiff material that we put in the plus or minus 45-degree section, so that lowered our torque section, and then we stiffened the tip up a lot. But because the torque was low and the tip was very stiff, we wanted to soften the handle section or the butt section of the shaft so that it didn't feel boardy. We wanted to introduce feel back into it, but yet get properties we're looking for. So that's one of the best benefits of carbon fiber golf shafts is the ability to put a material exactly where I want it for the properties I'm exactly looking for.
Wow, you just said a lot right there. I've got so many questions running through my head right now. Yeah, I mean about fitting and so one of the questions I sent you before was the process of making a shaft. So go into that a little bit of the materials, and I want to go more into specifically how you change the performance of a shaft. So from I don't know if people out there know how shafts are made, but graphite shafts or composite shafts are fairly complicated. Yep. From my understanding, much different than a steel shaft. Am I correct?
For sure, no doubt about it. The design starts actually in a proprietary software that our vice president designed in-house, and so we make a design on the computer. So our designers and engineers can go through, and we can know fairly certain what the final characteristics are going to be on the computer before we actually go back into the lab to build the shaft. We've done a few how it's made videos in the past, and also we've done a few things with some of the other websites around. My Golf Spy's done their Shaft University last year, and so there's a lot of good information out there that if you or your viewers wanted to go in and you could see exactly how a golf shaft is made. We start by once we get the computer design done, then we go out and we take the carbon fiber. So carbon fiber, graphite, there's many different words for it. The official technical term would be carbon fiber reinforced plastic. So it's a composite material. We take a carbon fiber, which is a yarn type fabric, we mix it with an epoxy resin or a glue, and the two pieces together then become a composite material. And so there's a myriad of types of fibers that can be used, different weights, different strengths. You hear terms talked about 24 ton, 40 ton, 120 110 MSI, right. Intermediate modulus, standard modulus. There's several terms that can be used for the same type of thing. But we can get a different material from our material vendor that is heavier, lighter, stiffer, that kind of thing. So we take that material and we cut it into pieces, puzzle pieces, if you will. They call them plies, as we talk about it in our world, plies of material. And then each ply is wrapped around a steel tool. So we have this solid steel tool that we wrap that material around. And when we wrap that material around it, um, depending on what we want that shaft to, how much we want it to weigh, what flex we want it to be, what we want that profile to be, we can put the material in different locations on that shaft. So um, the the way that the carbon fiber travels along a golf shaft imparts different properties. I talked earlier about plus or minus 45. So if the carbon fiber travels in an angle on the golf shaft, that gives us twisting strength. If the fiber travels along the length of the golf shaft, that gives us bending strength. And if it travels around the shaft, that gives us crushing strength. Hoop strength is the technical term for that.
Right.
So we can put material at any location in the shaft in any orientation to get that property we need. So it's really cool, and that's the one of the funnest parts I have of my job is when people come visit us in Carlsbad, and I can actually take them out in the lab, and I can show them piece by piece. They can see firsthand how we wrap the material on, what the material looks like. So it's one of the coolest things. So you can see every part we make is handmade.
Hmm.
So the process we use in Carlsbad is the same process we use at our factories throughout the world. So it's way cool.
Yeah, that, in talking about that, I remember this had to have been the late 90s. I think when your first shafts came out, I was working at the McLean School at Doral, and we had a club fitter, and I went down and we just messing with some shafts, and once I went, this was back before we had the sure fit, so we had to try different heads, back in the olden days, and it was pretty interesting. I took my driver, made a swing, and picked up the next driver with the Fujikura shaft, made a swing, and my club speed was immediately 4 miles an hour faster. I'm like, how can that be in one swing? I didn't swing any differently, and I picked up 4 miles an hour. And I remember this specifically. He's the fitter. I'm drawing a blank on his name. His name's Chris. Said these Fujikura shafts, they don't flatten out as much. They keep their roundness better, so they transfer the energy through the shaft better. I thought that one. Well, I got to have that because I don't want to give up 4 miles an hour and not and not have to change my
Yeah.
swing. And so I think the performance that you guys put into these shafts is quite spectacular, and the feel. So if you can go into a little bit of how you change the performance of the shaft or the feel of the shaft, for somebody like myself, I like a shaft that feels a little stiffer in the tip and that has a little bit more torque to it because it helped me to release. So if you can kind of go into that, maybe touch a little bit on the fitting aspect of it too.
Sure, no problem. When you think about back in the day, the original Speeder 757 you talk about used a material called triax. So that triaxial weave of the carbon fiber material is what helped us prevent that ovaling during the golf swing. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where material technologies were, I mean, that's a Department of Defense grade satellite material that we were able to get our hands on, and that kind of built us into the market. We were the only ones to be able to use that and helped us create this high-end custom aftermarket category that we're a part of now. So
Mm-hmm.
when we look now, the technologies, one of the biggest things we have that helps us in designing shafts and figuring things out is our ENSO 3D fitting system. So we use it much more as an R&D tool than a club fitting tool at this point. So we're able to, through this camera system, we're able to know exactly what's happening with a golf shaft, twisting, bending throughout the entire swing. So we can put something together where we look at hey, what happens if we make the tip section stiffer, the middle section soft, and the butt section soft? So we can break down these sections of the shaft and say, okay, if I do this to the shaft, what's the result I see in performance from that? Alex D calls that pulling levers. So he likes to pull the levers and say, okay, if I'm going to adjust the torque in this section of the shaft, or if I'm going to adjust the stiffness in this section of the shaft, what what impact does it have on the resulting golf swing at that point? So that's how we go through our test procedure is the guys will create a matrix of shafts for us with different characteristics. Again, breaking down into those three main sections of the shaft we like to look at: the tip, the butt, and the mid. And from there, we say, okay, when we see like for instance with Ventus came out, when we made the tip ultra stiff and the midsection mid stiffness and the butt section towards the softness, that we saw better center face contact as we look at the reviews from that. So we know, okay, when this happens, we're keeping the head more stable coming through impact. We're onto something here. Let's run and go with it. The same thing happens when we look at our new Matori X shaft that just came out. We're saying, okay, what can we do to get something in a mid-price category but still get the benefits that come from it? Alex pulls some levers, puts a stiff material in a certain spot, and we get great performance from it. So those are the key things that we're looking at as we're doing research and development testing of a golf shaft. What do we want the end result to be? Everybody wants extra club head speed, extra yardage. So if we can do something where we can help efficiencies work with the club heads that are out there. There's so many good club heads out there, and their engineers work on moments of inertia. And how am I going to be able to have a shaft that complements what that club head designer is doing? So we're working with all the OEMs to say, hey, how can we have a shaft that works with what you guys have going? And the research and development tools that we have are incredible. The ENSO motion capture system has been a godsend for us, and we've had many projects that have been born coming out of just what we see in there. With that, we've had PGA Tour pros come in looking for certain things. We're able to get their swings on there, and somebody who wants to hit it more towards the heel side and hit a controlled cut, then we can design a shaft and say, okay, in order for you to consistently hit more from the center to the heel, we're going to keep the tip softer, so the club head will droop a little more coming through impact. You can control where you're hitting it. So it's just amazing what the options are.
Yeah, I've seen the Enzo at the PGA show, and it's not fair what you guys can do. I want one, but what are they, about 100,000?
Yeah, actually, and we're not even selling them anymore. There's only 3 that exist in the world. So.
So you were selling them at one point?
That was the plan, and we did have one club company who bought one from us, and they use it quite a bit. And then my team in Japan has one. So
yeah. So talk to me about what you're seeing, kind of, because everyone's interested in what the tour players are doing. I think that kind of drives the golf market for, not that we can play like tour players, but we want to use the equipment that they're doing, and we like the shafts that they're using. So what kind of trends do you see now on the tour? What do you see coming down the pipe?
Sure. So I had a lengthy conversation with our PGA Tour rep, Pat McCoy, leading up to this, and kind of said, hey, Pat, let me know, what you see going on out there. What would you say are the trends? The first thing he wrote back to me actually came back to the club heads, that the OEMs out there basically have multiple club head options for the players out there. You might have something with a CG being forward and another CG being further back, so high MOI launch conditions. So the golf club manufacturers, they're getting different options out there for their players, because no 2 players really swing the same, and they could be looking for different things. So interesting from that side that the club manufacturers have multiple offerings. Yeah, I think I saw Might have been the Callaway Maverick when they launched on tour. I want to say there was something like 7 or 9 options of heads that were available out there. So that's a huge trend that the that the players on tour are seeing from those guys. The other thing is for shafts, I would say the average weight for golf shafts for the tour players are in that high 60s to mid 70 range. You've got guys out there using 50-gram options. We've had a couple guys for a long time that use super lightweight, super stiff product. Daniel Berger for a long time played what we call our Pro 53K, something that's in that 55 to 58 gram range, but is like a double X stiffness, so light and stiff. To guys who like something in that 90 and 100 gram range. Steve Stricker, talk about a Titleist guy, right? Steve Stricker for a long time has played our Mattori Speeder Tour Spec 9.2 in his driver. So, wow. And that's 90 gram stiff piece of rebar. So interesting from that side. There's, for the most part, guys are in that 65 to 75 gram weight range. That's the honey spot. You get the guys who like something lighter, like something heavy, because that's what they've played their whole life. That you see that happen out there. Probably the biggest trend that Pat sees out on tour is each of the players having their own launch monitor. I mean, you get a bunch of these guys that are all about their numbers now, and whether they do it at home or what. I'm trying to think who I saw. Somebody posted on their social media yesterday, Brennan Grace, that he got his TrackMan set up on his indoor thing. So he's sitting inside now at his house with his TrackMan. I mean, you see the guys, they bring them out themselves. They sit down. They want to know what their spin numbers are throughout the entire bag, right? So the information that is available to the golfer now is just amazing. And then what they can do with it. They know when they go to a particular golf course where maximum distance is what they want. They want something that's launching a little lower, little piercing trajectory with low spin. If it's a course that's going to be wet, they're more concerned with carry. So they want something that might launch a little bit higher, maybe just a touch higher spin than normal. So they maximize their carry because the course is wet that week. Nothing's going to roll out. So the interchangeability. I mean, many of these guys are into that now, and they want what performs best. I mean, heck, their paycheck depends on it, right? That's the thing that's amazing is, if you don't make the cut, you don't make a paycheck from the tournament that week. So livelihood depends on it, and I've got to have the best equipment. So that's what they're out there. One of the interesting trends, real quick, sorry to interrupt, talking with Pat this morning, he got some statistical data that showed 75 players in the last year had clubhead speeds at over 120 miles per hour.
Yeah, I saw someone posted that. That's amazing, right? I mean, it's just that people don't realize how fast 120 miles an hour of clubhead speed is, and it's not easy to get there. I've at my highest, I've peaked at 118. Which is not slow, but you try to, you see some of these guys swing at 120. I had the luxury of playing in the QBE a couple of years ago, and I was hitting balls next to Cameron Champ, and it's like he hits a shot, and I turn around, I'm like, what was that? And he's hitting 6 irons, 200 yards, just blistering them out there. And as soon as he got his driver out, it's like it's absolutely unbelievable. And I got 2 questions for you about the tour guys. One, do you see any difference in lengths now? Tour averages used to be 43.5, then they went as high as 45. They're kind of bouncing around. What do you see as average length for PGA Tour players now?
Yeah, actually, I talked about that specifically with Pat this morning as well. We saw. Might have been last year, 2 years ago, we saw a trend go to that, the Jimmy Walker, Ricky Fowler, 43.5-inch driver, right? They went that route. Some guys are still staying long. Average on tour, if you average it all out, they're probably just about 45 inches from the standard.
What do you think
I know for – what's that?
What do they go? What's the deviation there? What do they go 47 to 44 now? What do you see?
I don't think you're seeing quite that much variation. I think most of the guys are probably staying in that 44 to 46 inch range. If I give myself a 2 inch gap,
Right.
with the averaging right about that 45. So I know guys that are want a little bit more control, right? You're inching down below that 45. You're between that 44 and that 45 inch range for a little bit. Again, they feel like maybe they have a little better control, can hit center face better,
Yeah.
and so it's more efficient for them. But average, just like the weight, between 65 and 75, your average is probably right in that middle, about 45.
Okay. And then going back to the changing the launch and the spin for the course, where they need to get it up for the wet courses or get it down. Are they changing shafts, or are they just changing the loft on their drivers, or are they doing a combination?
I think you're seeing a combination a lot of times. One of the things that we did a couple years ago when we came out with our Atmos Tour Spec line is we made the handle section of the three models similar for all three launch profiles. We adjusted launch profile through the middle and the tip of the shaft so that a player, if they had one that a particular product they liked and wanted to change a ball flight, they could change to a red or a black and get a higher or lower ball flight, but still keep the same feel in their hands. We see guys that stick with that a lot. So if they can keep the same shaft and just make a slight adjustment to the head loft or even the CG location in the head, a lot of guys are doing that. But we see guys week to week that are testing shafts too. They want to see, hey, I want to reduce spin. Is there a shaft I need to change to do that? So as much as we don't want them to, the interchangeability and the prevalence of information on launch and spin helps these guys to make that decision.
Yeah, guys. So I got a question here from a buddy of mine, Kevin Lynch. This kind of goes back to the development of shafts. He goes, "Have you worked with different weights at different sections of the shaft? And if so, what do you see when you move the weight around like that?"
Yeah, I don't really have an answer for that. Not something we've looked at that I have been a part of. Mostly when we're looking at different sections of the shaft, we're looking at stiffness and torsion. Some of those can be weight related, but also I can make that adjustment by going to a lighter weight, stiffer material. So weight positioning in the shaft probably more has to do with shifting weight tip side or shifting weight butt side. If I go back to our fuel line of shafts from nearly 10 years ago, the fuel shaft was a very stiff overall profile, had a lot of material and weight down towards the tip section. So it was your anti-counterbalanced. A lot of material down there, stiffened the tip, helped us to get that low launch. Then we had other products, Speeder Pro, and even some of the Pro lines where we moved material up towards the butt side to give us that counterbalance. So if I said playing with weight in sections of the shaft, that would be the kind of things we've done where we shifted some weight butt side to get more of a lighter swing weight counterbalanced aspect to it, or we've shifted weight in the middle or towards the tip of the shaft. I don't have a good answer for that, but I would be happy to talk to Alex and I could get something back to you that you could let Kevin know.
Okay, great. Got another question from Chris Cantonese, who I think you know. He goes, "JB, do you think professionals will move to graphite in the irons as the standard?" And that was a question I had coming up too. So what
Awesome. Love.
You don't see too many graphite shafts out there yet for irons, but I think it's going to start coming down the line, huh?
I'm going to say we're going to see the trend happen sooner rather than later. The material advances in graphite and what they've allowed us and other shaft manufacturers to do in the iron shafts is phenomenal. One of the things we've done is we've been able to take a 95 gram graphite shaft, and I can make that shaft have the same swing weight as a 130 gram dynamic gold steel shaft. but in a lighter weight, softer profile. So for someone who wants to do club, if you want to do some custom club building, or you want to exchange a steel shaft into a graphite shaft, we've got this pro line of shafts where you can cut 35 grams in weight, but still maintain the same club swing weight with the same club head without having to add. Historically, in the past, graphite iron shafts have been a lot lighter swing weight wise. So to counteract, you had to either build the club longer, you had to have a heavier club head, put some ugly lead tape on a club head to be able to get swing weights back to where they needed to be. But with material advances, we're able to design something lighter weight that can maintain that as well. We actually have one model in that Pro 95 Tour Spec line that it flexes 10 cycles stiffer than an X100 dynamic gold shaft from True Temper, but it only weighs 98 grams. So it's super stiff, has some feel to it. Again, we go back to where I can position carbon and how stiff I can make it in areas. I can go lighter weight, get some feel in the butt section to it, and not have a piece of rebar that feels in your hands. So you get vibration dampening characteristics. Carbon fiber by itself has some properties that allow the harsh vibrations of impact with the club head and the turf to not get all the way back up to our elbows. Mm-hmm. I've got some guys that I've provided parts to, even in like the 115 gram category, where guys, a friend of mine in New Jersey, he was having some elbow problems, and so we went to our 115 gram graphite iron shaft, and he was able to put those in play and immediately notice a difference in the vibrations feels in his elbow when he's playing golf. So you get benefits, health benefits, but then also we're able to keep same ball flight. And a lot of times I can actually raise trajectories, keep same distances with carbon fiber. Now, in the past, graphite iron shafts weren't nearly as consistent as they are in today's environment. So that's where you think back to the historical nature of graphite, and people say, oh, it's not as consistent as my steel shaft. I get the flyer, or it doesn't feel the same, it doesn't go the same. We've been able to with our designs and even other shaft manufacturers out there, there's some really good graphite iron shafts. To Chris's question, the thing with Tour is graphite iron shafts are a lot more expensive than steel. And with what a lot of guys go through, there's some significant expenses to go out onto Tour and to switch out full sets of iron shafts, things like that. So we've seen there's a few guys who've been successful on Tour with some graphite from one of my competitors. Snedeker, those type of guys that have put graphite in play and have had success with it. One of the things we look at, obviously, we've got in our company several plus handicap scratch golf guys who are in that clubheads range you talked about. So high speed guys that have gone to 95 and 115 gram graphite in their iron shafts and are continuing to be successful at it. So I think we'll see more of it on Tour, especially if you look the last few years. Driving irons, things that have come out like that, those type of things, the UDIs. Brooks Koepka played our Pro 95i for a long time in his UDI. So as we see more of those get incorporated into sets, I think you're opening up guys who are willing to say, hey, this works really well in my driving iron. Maybe I can try it in these others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those same guys. I mean, I tried graphite irons from one of your competitors a few years ago. Liked them. I'm back to steel. For more of a field preference than anything, because it used to be, you think graphite shafts, you think of slower swinging players, people that need to get the ball up in the air, harder to, needed a little bit more spin. are these lightweight? Is this 95 gram shaft that you're talking about? Are you able to get it to where it feels good, but not like a board, but you're able to control the spin on a shot? Because there are some shafts, typically the shafts that we put players into that need to control spin tend to feel a little bit boardy.
No doubt about it. And again, that goes back to a little bit of how shafts were made in the past. You know, when you had to get heavier weights, you had to put so much material. So material advances have allowed us to be able to do things where we can make it stiff enough, we can make it stable enough, but we can also add feel into it. So again, I've got guys like you in that 115, 117 club head range that are playing 95 gram graphite iron. Now, the swing weights are the same as the steel that they're used to. The big thing, it takes a little getting used to because the overall weight is lighter weight, right? So that's where you get that big difference. It takes a little bit of time. You got to get some practice, but when we can build them at the same swing weights, that makes a huge difference in playing. If it feels the same when you're swinging it, you can feel where the club head is, but yet you can still control it. We're able to make them stiff, stable, and great performing. So I would put one of our 95 or 115 gram options up against any steel shaft out there any day.
Yeah, I would say would you say that the only downside to graphite shafts is going to be the cost?
Not necessarily, because even like we're talking about this Pro 115, Pro 95i, they're running $55 at retail. So just not that much more than if you're going to buy a KBS, C taper or a Project X, something, right? I mean, they've raised the price of a lot of those steel shafts to the point where graphite is not out of the realm. Now, I do have some parts, from my Japan team called MCI, that's a metal composite. Those we get into the $120 a pop, right? So there you're taking a jump up in the cost side. You're getting some same benefits of carbon fiber. You get some properties of steel that are associated with it, but then you pay for it. But for the most part, the steel guys have come up in price, so gap is very small. It's not a huge step for somebody to say, "Oh, I was going to upgrade, but I can't do it because they're that much expensive."
Your shafts are manufactured in Japan?
It depends what the product is. So I've got 4 factories around the world. We make stuff in Japan. I've got a Fujikura factory in Vietnam, which is where most of our product is made. And those 2 are owned by Fujikura. They're wholly owned. So we make most of our aftermarket product there. We do have some factories in China where we do some OEM products, and they make some other products. They do make some of our aftermarket stuff there, but they use the same materials, same technology, same designs. So it doesn't matter where it's made. Uses the same carbon fiber, and they're built to the same quality standards. So Japan stuff, if you're buying one of our speeder products, the speeder products are mainly still made in Japan.
Yeah. And so what's been the best selling shaft for you? I think I know the answer, but and it's not fair to the Ventus, and the Ventus is so new. But what's been your number one selling product that you've had?
Number one, so if we look at volume wise, so the nice part about our lineup, when you look at it, we feel we have something for everybody in every price category. So volume wise, our Vista Pro line is what we move the most of. That's Vista Pro is we call it our Club Maker series. You can get you a graphite driver shaft for about $100 installed from one of the fitters. And we also move a lot of iron and hybrid shafts in that line. If we look outside of that market, the Atmos line has been great for us. The Atmos Blue 60 gram S-Flex over the last 5 years has probably been overall the number one seller. So, and if you look at across any of our models, even in the Ventus line, if you look at 60 gram S-Flex, that's the number one SKU that moves in the families. Ventus has blown us away. with just a year in the market, just unbelievable the adoption of the players from the tour side, from the aftermarket side, from the OEM side, custom upgrade options. It's been phenomenal for us.
And you probably can't answer me specifically, but what you got coming down the pipeline? Anything exciting coming out?
There's always something we're trying to do, right? I'm going to say, I'm going to jump back to what we just introduced this year, because in reality, it was in the marketplace for a month before this whole COVID pandemic hit us, was the Motori X. The Motori X takes what we've learned in the technology of the Ventus line with, we call it a split bias. So the ability to add different materials to get us the torque we want. Motori X is an engineering marvel that at a great price for a custom upgrade aftermarket option. Alex and his team are always looking towards the future. One of the cool things I'll tell you, I'm not shy in saying, is that if you're a Ventus fan and you use hybrids, just hold tight. It's it'll be there.
I'm still using my F3 Motori from years ago. That was my favorite hybrid shaft. It was a 95, 98 gram shaft. It's very stable. I'm excited. Yep. You sent me the new Motori X. It's sitting in a box right when I got it. Everything kind of shut down. I haven't had a chance to stick it in my driver and play it, so I'm looking forward to that.
Right. Chris has a slow day. Nothing going on at home, huh? He's just hanging on the Facebook.
Yeah, Chris is slow. So he's got a question between the Motori X and the Ventus Velo.
Okay. So obviously the big Ventus with Velo Core. Velo Core in and of itself is the technology that utilizes the pitch 70-ton material combined with a 40-ton ultra high modulus material. They go at that 45-degree angle. Mm-hmm. So that gives us a super low torque rating, and then we adjust the stiffness accordingly. Motori X uses the 40-ton, which is part of the Ventus Velo Core. It uses a 40-ton, and then also combined with an intermediate modulus material to create the bias on that one. So they're related. They're super close to each other, cousins. But the Velo Core, little lower torque, little more stability. But the Motori X torques are in that mid range. But again, with Motori X, we were able to create the two models, the F1 and the F3. The F1 would be, if you were to consider a tour spec model, it's the lower launch, lower spin, little different profile. And then the F3 would be your mid launch with a mid to low spin option. So that's the difference between Ventus and Motori X is material and a little bit of the construction.
Yeah. Well, great. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of information. Can obviously see your passion for the business, and I guess you do need a mechanical engineering background for all this. I want to thank you I've got no other questions. We kind of covered a lot. There's no other questions out there, so I think we'll respect your time. I appreciate you coming on here, sharing your information. If people want to get a hold of you, if they've got questions, or any of the fitters out there have any questions, how do people seek you out? Yep.
You can seek me out. My email, happy to give that out. The letter J Butler at fujikuragolf.com. We also have sales at fujikuragolf.com, which is a way it goes to our general questions mailbox. Any of the social media platforms, you can reach out Fujikura. I just want to give a shout out, Fujikura Golf. We have the best team in the business. We work with we're a small group. We're tight knit. A lot of us have worked together for a long time. So we've tried really hard to work through this pandemic that we're dealing with, and I want to get our team back together. I can't wait till we can all be back together in the office and continue to design, develop the best golf shafts in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know a few guys over there, and you've guys, you have a great team. You have a great product. I'm always excited to hear about the new Fuji stuff coming out. Like I said, when we started out, I've been a long time Fuji fan. I haven't had another driver shaft, for that matter, a fairway shaft in my club for as long as I can remember. And always look forward to the PGA show and seeing you and and Chad over there. And thanks again for coming out. If anybody who's watching has any questions, or if you watch the replay of this, you have any questions, you can post them on my Facebook page, or you can reach out to Jeremy on his Facebook page. Happy to help out. Maybe Jeremy, you can post a couple of those sites to kind of where people can see how your products are made. I know you mentioned a few things at the beginning of this, so maybe you can post something on your Facebook, and I'll share it on mine.
Sure.
Kind of explore and thanks again. Have a great night. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you out there.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on. Let me talk golf shafts with you anytime.
Yep. Thanks, Jeremy. Have a good night.
Right. Cheers.
Yep. Bye.